Yeah. I heard you tried in 2000.
12 years ago I started. Yes. I didn't, it wasn't like I didn't put it in, it was rejected. I talked about doing it. But I mean, then, that was before Doctor Who came back, so if it had happened, then it would be probably a very small scale, quiet thing. So it's really, everything's kind of come together at the right time for the 50th anniversary. But it's a very interesting story. But obviously the impetus caused by the programme itself being 50 and the new show being such a huge success has obviously helped it. I don't really know. I suppose you could ask that to anyone who's a fan of anything. But with Doctor Who, I can see myself now sitting at age about 4 or 5 on the TV, and I remember very well the first thing which I saw, which was the Autons coming through the shop window, John Pertwee's first story, and then talking to my brother and sister, my parents, about it, and they told me, but there were other Doctors before John, so it just grabbed me. I've always been a morbid. I was a morbid child, so I was obsessed with horror. So as soon as anything scary came on TV, I was there. So I suppose it was just must have been a strange mixture of things. The one thing I can remember very well, and I was very small, I was only 5 or 6, 5. There's a John Pertwee story called The Demons, about black magic. And at one point, and they're opening up an ancient barrow, and this alien force comes out. But just for a few minutes, the live broadcast appears to be the real thing. And I was very small, It actually says it's BBC Three. This is years before BBC Three arrived. But the reporter's name comes up, and he talks right down the lens. And I was just a little kid, and I thought Doctor Who had become real. And then this gargoyle comes alive, and then the Doctor apparently gets killed. I was traumatized, and that kind of thing, it doesn't leave you, I think. I can't honestly. There's no point in even talking about that sort of thing, and it's not. I think Stephen is, as Russell did before, he's doing an incredible job, the hardest job in the world in television, and I hope he does it as long as he wants to. It's I've just said this, but it's true. I think there is no job in television where so many other people think they know how to do it, and it is so demanding if you care, which both Russell and Stephen do up to their eyebrows. Well, the big difference is obviously Stephen and I created Sherlock together, devised our version of Sherlock together. It's our kind of baby, and we work very closely on that. And it's some of the most fun I've had really is just the two of us brainstorming what we might do next, and which is thrilling. It's kind of exciting with a character we've always loved since we were kids, and with that's the same with Doctor Who, but because Stephen runs Doctor Who. It's really the only thing I do that I'm not also producing or behind in that way. But it's not just a job, it's Doctor Who, so I'm very happy to carry on as long as they'll have me. Well, you say that, it is like treading on holy ground if you're an old school fan. Most people who watch Doctor Who just watch it, and one of the most terrifyingly sobering things about working in television is that people don't watch programs the way you want them to. You think, oh God, I've just changed that bit in the first 5 seconds, and then someone says, oh, I call the last 5 minutes of that, and you go, what? Most people watch it whilst cooking tea, whilst having a chat, whilst stroking the dog. It's a very different thing, and so the main audience of a show, particularly Doctor Who, I'd say, is just people who like it, and if it's on, they'll watch it. There is also then obviously a huge fan base who watch it in detail, But if you think about that before the first audience, then you've lost. And that's what has kept Doctor Who fresh and alive for 50 years, is that periodically it totally changes. Because its audience grows up. And if there's any constant in Doctor Who, it's someone saying, "It's not as good when I was a little boy or a little girl." And it's usually because they're not a little boy or a little girl anymore. And their children will be saying, "Oh no, this is it." I mean, it's happened to me. You know, it seemed, I'm 46, 47 now, and it seems bizarre to me that anyone grew up with, you know, Sylvester or even Chris Eccleston was their doctor when they were a kid. You know, it's terrifying. And now the gap between, but it's 8 years, you know, so you could have started watching when you were 8 and be nearly 20 now. It's a huge gap. So, but it happens every time, I think. Well, there was a news report the other day. Every now and then these things happen where you think about scientists, don't you have something better to do? There was a news report saying the world one day was going to end because the sun will expand. And did you see it? It was about the only things that will survive are microbes. It's like, I sort of knew this. Is this news? It was the end of a 7-year study, basically called No Shit Sherlock. And I was thinking, well, Doctor Who fans won't be happy, because that means that one day the show will end in 50 billion years' time. And, you know, Doctor Who was off the air for 15, 16 years. I hope it carries on as long as we all have air in our bodies. But if it doesn't, I'm sure it'll come back again, because it's the brilliant thing about the Doctor, and it's not said enough, is that even though the character and the show has literary antecedents, particularly Sherlock Holmes, H.G. Wells, the Doctor is a television original. He's not a character from literature made into a series. It's a very rare thing, that. And actually, if you think about most detectives, or they are from books and they're made, but the Doctor is a television conception, and it's such a good series of ideas. An alien who thinks he basically looks like a human, who travels around in a police box that's bigger on the inside and rights wrongs. It's just lovely. So, you know, I guess probably one day, as it happened originally, hopefully not for many, many years, it'll probably be rested again, but then it'll come back. Of Doctor Who?
Yeah.
I guess it would probably be the Crimson Horror, which is my latest one, because I think it's the most me. And obviously over the years, I've sometimes Russell or Stephen will say, "Yeah, would you do one about this? Or can you add these elements?" But in the end, the Crimson Horror turned out to be sort of undiluted me. It's quite so strange, I think. It was great fun to make, and also very rare thing, because I wrote it for Diana Rigg and her daughter Rachel, because I know both of them. And it's very unusual to write a Doctor Who for, you know, specifically for people. So I was doing a play with Rachel Sterling at the time, and Diana was having an operation on her knee. Rachel would come into the theatre every night with these amazing stories, and I just used to put them into the script. So really a bit. She came and found her mother with her face turned to the wall in the hospital. And she said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "You know, I can't bear to look at sick people." So I put it straight in. Yes, that's my thing.
Well, you keep in mind that it's a family show, but...
Of course, yes. And I remember the sort of things that frightened me about Doctor Who when I was a child. There are... I mean, it's a difficult call, and obviously it's not my responsibility, not totally my responsibility. But there are things I think you probably instinctively know that's not too far. But really, the most frightening things are still up here. And I was just saying earlier on, actually, I remember watching a David Tennant episode, Tooth and Claw, with a werewolf, at Steve Moffat's house, and his little boys were not frightened at all by the werewolf, which is a beautiful, expensive CGI creation. But the man who turns into the werewolf, his eyes just turn black with contact lenses, and they didn't sleep for weeks. So you could sort of legislate against these things, and then it turns out to be the last thing you expect. Because I remember when I was frightened, when I was little, I was terrified of wolves and quicksand. I don't know where I got either of them from, but I was petrified. But you couldn't, I mean, you know, there's nothing you can do to stop yourself being frightened of these. Oh yeah, I mean,
you put it on paper.
I read an episode called Night Terrors about a little boy. A lot of the things he's frightened of are things I was frightened of when I was little.
It is scary.
Dolls.
It's a scary one.
And people. My abiding terror remains to this day, and it happened to me this night, is waking up and feeling someone sitting on the bed. And I was in a hotel the other night, and I turned over in bed and I felt it, and my heart just pounded. There was a pile of towels I'd forgotten to leave. Yeah. Yes, these involve Sherlock Holmes. Dr. Watts. Episode 1 is called The Empty Hearse, you probably know that. Episode 2 is called The Sign of 3. And episode 3, the title is being slowly revealed in the subtitles on the repeats of the season, which has just started repeating on BBC One, except that Andy Murray won his match last night, so the episode is being postponed. So it's in this. Yes. I forced them. I have a very old contract with the BBC, and somewhere in there there's just a clause. If ever we do Sherlock. No, it came about because we wanted to, when we made the pilot and then expanded that story, reshot it into 90 minutes. We brought in Mycroft and Moriarty as the threat with the first 3, and we had this idea that if we made Mycroft appear to be Moriarty, people would fall for it, which they largely did. And Steve Thompson, who's the other writer, said to me, "You should play that." So I went, "Yeah, all right." Well, I don't know. Nobody, I think, has a checklist of old things to bring back. The Ice Roads were always one of my favourites, and I had an idea about how to do it. You know, the idea that we've never seen inside them, so they are kind of traditionally very lumbering. And I thought, well, what if it opens up and inside it's incredibly fast? It's going. So that was the kind of idea. It was more than just bringing them back. It was having a new idea. I mean, I have a lot of favourite monsters. The Zygoths are back for the 50th anniversary. They're fantastic, but it's more important to try and create new ones that people will ask that question about in 50 years.